Looking forward to getting to know you all better.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, it's Corey, and I am here.
Hey, Corey.
And Candace is here as well. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. It's going to be an exciting time. Lots of questions, lots of things going on.
Hi, this is Diana Perez, sitting in for Kim Harless, City of Vancouver Council member.
Hi, Diana.
Hi.
Jason, we do have a quorum.
Okay, fantastic. Well, it is 6:01, so would like to call this meeting to order. We do have a quorum. Believe Amanda has the attendance for us. Did everyone get a chance to review the meeting minutes of the November 7th meeting?
Yep.
Could I get a motion for approval?
I'll move to approve, even though I wasn't there. I have read the minutes.
That's funny. I'll second it.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so moves. Now on to program updates. Is Jeff Harbison on here? Solid Waste and Recycling Finance.
Yes, hello, everybody. My name is Jeff Harbison. I'm the Administrative Services Director for Clark County Public Health. I have been spending the last several weeks working very diligently with the solid waste staff in Clark County, working on financial projections for the comprehensive solid waste management plan. I'm going to walk through some of those. This shows 2023 and 24 actuals and then projections for 2025 through 2030. Before I get into that, I want to talk about our year-end process and some of the numbers you're going to see for 2024. 2024 is not quite closed. The numbers you're going to see for 2024 are preliminary. I do not expect much else to post. These are current as of a couple days ago. So these should be very, very close to final. So we're going to go through each of the funds, and I'm going to share my screen. And we're going to get into, oops, share. And then let's look at this. All right, so I need to get some of this stuff out of here. All right, can everyone see that chart?
Yep.
All right, so this is the Clark County Solid Waste Fund. It's an enterprise fund 4014. Again, we're going to see 2023 and 2024 actuals, 2025 budget through 2023 projected. We have all of our revenues at the top sorted in groups. We have our local solid waste financial assistance grant. In public health and most local governments, we love acronyms. LSWFA, again, local solid waste financial assistance. We have all of our solid waste fees, the regional admin fee, single family recycling, multifamily recycling, yard debris. We have a curbside revenue share program, and then the county health fee. We have a subtotal for services and charges. The last grouping, we're titling it other. It is investment interest. And then FARF, if you're unaware, is the Financial Assurance Reserve Fund. That is the special revenue fund we have set up to handle post-closure activity of the Leichner landfill. We actually receive some support covering staff time, solid waste fund staff time that's spend time managing FARF each year. And then last but not least, we have miscellaneous revenue, whatever else falls into that bucket. We have a total revenue, and then we move on to expenditures. Wages and salaries, any separation payout, overtime, benefits, and then, I'm sorry. We have a pension adjustment that is required by GASB for enterprise funds. GASB is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. The actuals for 2023 is correct. The 2024 is an estimate I've received from the county auditor's office, and then they've sort of walked me through a formula to come up with to calculate a projected pension adjustment moving forward. We have a subtotal for personnel. We have other operating, so supplies, professional services. Apologize. Communications, telephone, advertising. I'm not going to go through all of these, but we have some granularity for other operating. And then a subtotal for that. I do believe staff have a chart also documenting, breaking down the professional services into more subgroups. We then have indirect or transfers. We have the county indirect, department indirect, and then in the operating transfers. And then this ending fund balance is just a calculation I added to show the change in ending fund balance. So this is going to be the total revenues less the total expenses. You'll see this net is zero. That's what that ending fund balance is doing, is it's actually equalizing revenues and expenses. And then this is a projected ending fund balance for the fund. And I actually have this for each of the 4 funds that we're going to be looking at. This ending 2023 fund balance for the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund, that is the actual number, $7,498,399.75. This is the projection for that fund balance rolling forward based on all of the assumptions in these charts. So I did want to pause before I move on to the next fund. I wanted to field any questions on the solid waste fund. And I can't see any hands raised, so.
I actually have a question. I wanted to, my name's Mike. One of the things when we were preparing and responding to the plan was they showed numbers in the past, and there was a number included in the material that was provided to us that showed that the county received $1.7 million that was supposed to be funds coming back from the sale of the recyclables. I do not see anything in this, the way this is broken out, that identifies any revenue coming back to the county on the sale of recyclables or a share in that revenue. Is it here?
Yeah, so I'll let Joelle speak to the 1.7 million. That's a number I don't have. The curbside revenue share program, from my understanding, that was what we used to deem the sale of recyclables. Joelle, you can correct me if I'm wrong and also probably provide a lot more meat on the bone for that answer.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the 1.7 million. We'll have to talk on the side about that, Mike.
Yeah, I can show you in the material that was provided to us.
Sure. And this is just reflecting what we receive. We get quarterly reports from Waste Connections, and we can also talk about that on the side, but this number reflects what we receive in revenue for the sale of recyclables.
Yeah, we're actually expecting a transfer tomorrow for the last payment for 2024. It is reflected in this $26,100.19 for 2024. That's our share, at least.
Okay.
Are there any other questions on the solid waste fund?
Yeah, go in, Jeff. Mine is related to the professional services. I asked the question last quarter on this as well. I was curious, 2 things about it. One is the size overall of professional services as compared to other parts of the budget. In fact, if you're able to scroll up a bit and show staff and professional services at the same time, you can straddling 2 pages there.
Yeah, it won't do it. I will tell you, yes,
But staff
go
wages and
ahead.
professional services, they're, kind of comparable in some years, around
Yes.
1 million, 1.4 million. And that was very surprising to me when I saw it at my first meeting last quarter. I asked for the breakdown. I appreciate staff sharing that breakdown. Is that also something that you're able to share with the public here, like on your screen, Jeff, the pie chart that staff shared with us?
So I don't have that with me currently, but I know staff do, and staff can take over screen share. I can stop sharing either right now or when I'm done presenting the funds. I'll leave that up to Joel or Amanda.
I'll finish the part of my question here. And so I guess it's with those professional services, if you look at the actual and then projected, it looks like you can go back there. Thank you. 2023 was 1 million. Last year, 2024, it was about half that. And then we're budgeting again about half of 2023. And then it bumps right back up to 1 million. I'm curious why there's such a big dip there and why it bounces back up.
I will defer to Joel. All of the projections from 2025 through 2030, I handled the labor piece, as well as things like technology, equipment replacement, and reserve some of those county costs. The operating costs around supplies and professional services, that would not be my area of expertise. Joel?
And Corey, we heard you last time, so we said, okay, we want to make sure we're breaking this out and showing it. We do that programmatically. So we did hear you. We want to make sure to speak to this, so we were prepared for you to take a peek at it and ask us about it.
Thanks.
In 2023, I came on as an interim program manager, and then eventually came into the position permanently. In 2023, we finished our regional solid waste systems study, and that study was managed by a consultant. We also had contract negotiations. We had a lot going on in 2023. And so that culminated in a lot of professional services expense. We also had a lot of staff turnover. So there was work that consultants were doing that we knew once we were able to recruit and hire, we wouldn't have to use consultants for that. So I am very proud of looking at this and saying, wow, look at how much we reduced the professional services budget. We brought that work back in-house. We became more efficient. We saved a bunch of money. So I am really happy to see those numbers, and I'm anticipating similar numbers in 2025. However, we also have some really big projects coming up, which I'm excited that we're all going to get to work on these together. So when we worked on the projected budget for the solid waste management plan, we kept that higher figure just in case. So we are anticipating continuing to keep our professional services and our consultants low, to continue to have staff do that work. But with the huge amount of projects that we're trying to accomplish in the next 5 to 10 years, we did include that higher number for the projections through the 2030 planning horizon.
Thanks for providing that context and a little history there. That's helpful. And I would generally say that I agree with bringing these folks in-house as much as possible. I think that's commendable work that you all have done, and I'd like to see that continue. If one thing I just as you're talking about projecting, and it does sound like there's going to be a lot of growth. The way that I kind of think about professional services often is it's when you budget for them in such high amounts, it's almost like maybe it's not quite an equivalent, but it's like budgeting for enormous amounts of overtime. And my view of that is like, let's budget for actual staff time. If we anticipate growth, let's budget for growth, and not necessarily lean on contracted services to do that. Maybe not everyone agrees with me on that, but I do think it's commendable to have staff do the work and to right size the staff to get it done. And then onto, if we can move on to the pie chart, unless there's other comments on that.
So I will stop sharing and I'll let someone share. I'm guessing someone else has access to the pie chart who can share it.
Yeah,
I did not
Amanda
retain
can
it. So.
share it. And I also want to note that Sarah Kearns also very much contributed to that reduction in professional services costs with her team and reducing the reliance on consultants too. So I don't know if you want to give a shout out to all the work you did too, Sarah. We've both been working together on this, so I want to make sure to highlight you too.
Yeah, I'll just quickly note from an outreach perspective that we were able to create more graphics internally using Canva as a tool. And so as opposed to having to create campaigns and have those graphics and other materials produced externally, we're doing that as a team now, just with the newer resources that have come on.
I love to hear that. I work in design myself, and Canva and their enormous library of design assets is really, really amazing to work with. And that was actually one of the pieces that it's looking at website marketing, outreach programs, school outreach. These are things that make up more than half of this pie chart and feel like could easily be brought in-house. I mean, I say easily, I don't know, but you all certainly know the work well, and I would love to see it brought in-house. And so I'd love to hear if folks could speak to any efforts that could be made in that regard.
I'll note here just while I'm unmuted. So for school outreach, that is actually a professional services agreement we have with EarthGen, which is a statewide certification and support body for schools across the state. And we have an agreement with them to specifically provide services to Clark County schools. And so from that perspective, like I agree. And as a philosophy, Joel and I have really taken to let's train staff, build up our internal capacity. At the same time, in some areas, it is more efficient to rely on an external service provider. And, that's just an example of one of those.
Thanks, Sarah. And that makes sense.
We take it back to Jeff.
And one other thing I just noticed, because just for folks who are looking at the pie chart, maybe for the first time, obviously contract negotiation, biggest piece of the pie out of any category. That seems like I was told that this was a 2024, and that had to do with, a contract that was being negotiated. Likely, we're not looking at 30% of professional services being contract negotiation going forward. Is that right?
That is absolutely right. And I'm pretty certain that we'll be able to at least give you more of an updated one each time we meet. It definitely annually. We're hoping for quarterly, as Jeff presents, that we can kind of just do a quick, hey, here's our update on, and be able to reflect that to you all, as we're proud of continuing to watch those shrink. But yeah, it was absolutely related to the getting the CRC, and you're going to hear about that today, the master service agreement for CRC with parametrics accomplished last year. And a lot of times when you get towards the end of negotiations, there's just more hours spent getting the last final details ironed out.
Which was a big project. I'm hoping that all that money was worth its weight. I think that's all that I have with respect to professional services. I appreciate y'all letting me dig in a little bit here.
All right, let me go back to sharing and get into the next chart. Clear some of this stuff out. Okay. So this is a representation of the Regional Solid Waste System Fund. This is also a special revenue fund that has been set up and designed to fund not only capital improvements at the existing 3 transfer stations in Clark County, but also potentially siting a 4th transfer station. This is funded with a lump sum contribution from CRC of 5.8 million. This is the contractual contribution based on tonnage with projections rolling forward, as well as this is actual interest earnings for 2024. And then we've got a formula that's calculating interest earnings based on the change in fund balance year over year. You'll see the total revenue here, fairly simple. The other operating expenditures, these again were projections from staff based on projects that we know are coming. We have ending fund balance serving the exact same purpose, and that is to equalize the revenues and expenses for the year. You'll again see a 0 net. The net is the difference between revenues and expenses. And then this actually gives us again the growth in fund balance. With this model at the end of 2030, we'd have a ending fund balance of just under $44 million. Any questions on this table?
And so I just wanted to say to Corey, this is an example of what was accomplished through contract negotiations, was getting this capital contribution into this fund, which is really exciting that we have funds to draw from to improve our system. So yeah, yes, contract negotiations were absolutely worth it.
Thanks.
All right, if there's no questions, I'll go on to, this is our solid waste closure or FARF, Financial Assurance Reserve Fund. Again, this is related to post-closure activities at the Leichner landfill. Again, this fund balance for the end of 2023 is what it was. 2024 is, again, not quite closed, but this should be fairly close. And then we got projected fund balances rolling forward. For those who are unaware, I'm sure you guys should be all aware, this fund was established with funding from both the city and the county. Again, the only revenues 23 forward have been investment interest and a small amount of miscellaneous revenue. You see professional or contracted services. This operating transfer, this is the amount transferred to the solid waste fund based on time they spend supporting the solid waste closure fund or FARF. Ending fund balance, again, serving the same purpose of equalizing revenues and expenses. And then the projected ending fund balance year over year, it's just under 11,500,000 right now, and it's still above 9.2 million at the end of 2030. I will not be able to answer a lot of questions on this one. I would have to defer to staff, but if there are questions, now would be the time. Let's take those. All right, Joelle, do I go over the DCI MRF?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Sure, yeah, no problem. Oh, of course, that's what I do. All right, this is the Designated Capital Improvement and Maintenance Reserve Fund, DCI MRF. Again, we love our acronyms. This is the contract. This is the result of the contract that Joe was speaking about earlier. This account is actually managed by CRC with contractual oversight by both the city and the county. Lump sum contribution of 4.2 million. And again, the calculation here is basically, it's in the contract. This is the residual amount guaranteed in the contract versus what's also in the Regional Solid Waste Systems Fund. This also has an investment interest calculation based on the rolling fund balance. There is a one-time barge reimbursement back to CRC in 2025 of just under $600,000. You see total revenues. We have other operating estimated approved capital projects, estimated approved maintenance projects. These are estimates. The ending fund balance calculation is again serving the same purpose of equalizing. Ending fund balance at the end of 2024, we have not seen an interest figure yet, but we're at 4.2 million. And just based on what's in the table, the end of 2030, the fund balance would be just under 18 million. So this is the last of the charts that I will be reviewing. If there are any questions on this chart or any of the previous charts, and again, I can't see raised hands, so.
One quick question. This is Mike again. On the first line, the contractual contribution lump sum,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm not picking up and sharp enough to pick up on what's the source of that money?
So CRC's pocketbook. Let me just, that's my answer. Joelle, do you want to?
I think that's fine. That's an answer. This is the contribution that we received from the master services agreement. And again, you're going to hear about that from Parametrics when they do their presentation in a little bit here.
Oh, okay. All right.
So,
I'll wait.
yeah, I don't want to steal any of their thunder, but this is one of I would say this is the most significant achievement that we had through negotiations, was that we got capital contributions into funds to fund capital projects and specific maintenance activities at the transfer stations. And so we have one fund that's managed by the county. That's the other fund that Jeff mentioned, the RSWSF. And then, so this one's our county fund, and that's considered regional dollars. And then the DCI MRF is, like Jeff said, managed by CRC. But both the city of Vancouver and Clark County review projects or any requests for reimbursements from that fund.
Yeah,
We have
a couple,
oversight over how it gets spent.
yeah, a couple of quick things. If you look at the lump sum for the Regional Solid Waste Systems Fund and the DCI MRF, the total is exactly $10 million. And like Joel was saying, I think the other good thing about the contracting process that we went through, any funds spent out of the DCI MRF, even though this account is managed by CRC, it must be approved by both the county and city. We also have contractual authority to see their bank statements, to see any withdrawals, any expenses charged against that, to confirm that they were actually approved by the county and city.
Okay. Thank you very much. Quick, short follow-up. Does this part of the long-term plan was the presumption that Clark County might take possession of the transfer stations and the MRF location? Does this number reflect Columbia Resources operating as a contractor to the city, or is this a pre-property transfer number? I don't know if my question's clear.
I think it makes sense, and I'm sure Joel's going to want to answer this, but I want to guess my answer first just to make sure. I think I'm following along here well. I believe the numbers you're seeing in these tables is under the status quo arrangement, so this would be a pre-transfer. So
Okay,
take it, Joel. I could be way off base there.
Oh, you got it, because they're gonna continue to own them until we decide on whether or not we'd like to own. And my team's doing a lot of work evaluating the levels of decision in terms of ownership. And so we'll be talking to SWAC about the cost benefit analysis that we're gonna be preparing and presenting later this year. So yeah, more fun to come on that, but the numbers are reflecting, hey, we have this capital money that we are gonna spend to make sure that if we decide to own them, they are in good condition when we receive them.
thanks, Joel.
Right, if there's not any additional questions for me, I think I covered, let me take a look. As I talked about with the DCI MRF, we are still developing internal controls, for the review process on these new funds. We will be fully transparent and sharing these reports every chance I get. I've always been open to, providing public data, which is what it is. So I think that's where we're at. And we already reviewed the types of professional services, which was requested at the last SWAC meeting. I think that was my presentation.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Jeff.
Mhm.
All right, moving on to solid waste enforcement with Chuck.
Turn on my audio. Hi, Chuck Harmon. I'm a program manager at Clark County Public Health. I think everyone knows we did some reorganization late last fall, and I've been reassigned to oversee the solid waste enforcement program. I've been here at the department since, get quick background so that those of you that don't know all this can know it, and those of you that already do will just be bored. But anyway, I started here in March of 2015, and right away was overseeing the program that Melissa Sutton was the primary person in. And so I did that for a few years, and then we did add new managers and staff due to the growth in the county. And those responsibilities got transferred over. Kimberly Walker Norton was a prior manager, who I'm sure most of you know. And so I did get back into this role at the beginning of the year. And I'm looking forward to working again with the team that we have doing the work. I think everyone knows Hannah Plodow is halftime in the program and is doing complaint response for us. And the other half of our FTE that's committed to all the inspections, facility inspections, is Jamie Cersei. They're both here in the meeting. I think they just came on camera. I think most of you know them. So we're right now, because of all the transitions, I'm getting back into the swing of things. We did get our quarterly report in for the end of last calendar year, and we are working on finishing the grant application to submit for the coming biennium. And so right now, and I'll just summarize kind of some of the activity that's been going on prior to my taking on this role, is Jamie and Hannah have been working hard to get some training in. They had an opportunity to go up to, and they can talk more details if they want to, but I know we're probably tight on time. Anyway, to do some training up at Tacoma Pierce with several of the folks that have been doing that work up there and looked at multiple facilities over a couple of days. That was really valuable to them. And then Jamie and I are going to work on a plan for beginning to rev back up the facility inspections. But because of the loss of Melissa and the need to develop and train the new staff, last quarter we did not, or the last quarter of 2024, we did not do any facility inspections, but continued to accept and evaluate and then address complaints that came in. So that's really all I have for tonight. We'll probably have more to talk about at the next SWAC meeting.
Perfect. Any questions for Chuck or anything like that? All right, let's move on to solid waste operations. Joelle.
Hi again, everyone. We had a just crazy January on our team. We got so many things accomplished. I have a really, really long list, so I'm going to try to run through them quick because I don't want to take too much time. First off, I wanted to mention that we are finishing up our current, like Jeff mentioned, we love our acronyms. So our local solid waste financial assistance grant. The current grant term will end June 30th. We submitted our grant reporting on time, which was very exciting. We got our grant amended so that we have the tasks corrected. And we also submitted our next application for the next list with a cycle. So that will begin July 1st. And that was very exciting. There was a condensed, shortened timeline to get that turned around, and we knocked it out. So that was awesome. Last Tuesday, I presented to the Clark County Council 2 projects that we've been mentioning for a long time. One was the North County Transfer Station Siting Study. That was approved by council. The contract was awarded to Parametrics. And we're really excited to get that contract signed and that work started. So we'll be bringing that to you definitely for the next few meetings, giving you some more updates on where we're starting off with that. Also, the other project that was approved by council was our waste characterization study. And that's going to be a study that's conducted throughout all of the county. And we're going to be talking about that as well. That's an exciting project because we're going to get baseline data for what's in the garbage and get an idea of how much recycling is in there, how much food waste is in there. And that data is going to really drive the decision making for both my team and Sarah Kearns' team. And we are thrilled. The last full waste characterization study we did was in 2012. Data is very old and we really need more current data. So that is very exciting. And we'll be bringing you updates about that as well. Obviously, we know the solid waste management plan, we're hoping to get it adopted by October, which means we are going to have a lot of work for you to do in the next coming months. We did a lot of work in January to get all of the public comments addressed. I see Christina's here with Ecology. We met with her quite a bit to make sure that we were meeting Ecology's guidelines and comments for the plan. Tonight, Amanda sent out to all of you the public comments and also Ecology's comments. So you have those that you can see what the comments are. You can also see our response to the comments. The county is also working on updating our yard debris collection contract. So that contract, it's an old contract. We did an RFP this year and we're in contract negotiations. So we expect to have a new contract in place. The contract was awarded to Waste Connections. We have a new contract in place, which really didn't change a lot of the terms, didn't increase rates. So there were not a whole lot to say, just that it's been a lot of work to make sure that we have more of a modern contract that's updated with more modern terms. And we also released an RFP for engineering services at the transfer stations. Like Jeff mentioned, we have all of this new funding available for capital projects at the transfer stations, which means we have a lot of work to do on my team in terms of getting processes in place so that we can review proposed projects and make sure that we're deciding on the right ones to move forward with. And that means that we don't have an engineer currently on our team that can do that. We didn't have an engineer available in Public Works that had capacity to review anticipated projects as they came in. So that RFP was released December 11th. We're currently evaluating proposals, and hopefully by next week we'll have some information on who is awarded that contract. I don't want to steal Sarah Kearns' thunder, but she's going to mention the We Compost presentation, and our team helps support that. And we are also doing an RFP for a facilitator for our Regional Solid Waste Systems Steering Committee. And that RFP is going to support the work and decision-making of public ownership when we work with our cities to decide, hey, if we are going to move forward with publicly owning the transfer stations, what does that governance structure look like? So that's that scope of work we've been working on, circulating through our steering committee, getting feedback, and we expect to have that released in April. So I didn't even say everything on my list. I could just keep going. Our team has been killing it.
Awesome, Joe. Thanks for sharing. Do you have a rough timeline on the waste characterization study?
You know, Sarah Schrader on our team is the project manager for that work. We had hoped that we would start in the first quarter of this year. We had anticipated this going to council last December. There was other priorities and we got bumped a couple of times. So we didn't get it approved, which means the work's not starting until February, March. So we're about a quarter behind. So we anticipate the full study will be finished around this time next year, I believe. I think we had to alter the scope just a little bit to extend that month or two of delay in getting the contract in place.
Fair enough. I'm eager to find out what's in the trash.
Yes, so is our council. That's what they said too.
Joelle, kind of along that line, if I may ask, Waste Connections operates somewhere in the neighborhood of 83 MRFs around the country. Has Waste Connections met with you to discuss waste characterization as to additional items that they're able to get out of other communities' recyclables that they're not getting out of ours? And is that included in the new MRF that's supposed to be relocated either to that's another question I'm saving for later, is the location.
That might be a good question for Derek, and I see he's on and he's going to do his updates in a little bit. So
Okay.
Maybe we can hold it for Derek. I mean, I have some thoughts, but
Thanks.
All right, any other questions for Joelle? All right, let's move on to solid waste education and outreach. Sarah.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I know you're all on the edge of your seats about We Compost since Joelle mentioned it. So that's what I'll kick off with. Last week, my team hosted an event for the individuals and organizations that support our community hub composting project called We Compost. And that's a program that supports residents having opportunities to divert food scraps, keep them out of the landfill by dropping them off at these like centralized community locations like churches, other people who live in apartments that don't otherwise have access to service can all participate in that program. And the celebration was a thank you and also some info sharing. And all of last year, there were we cleared 50,000 pounds of food waste diverted from the landfill through that project. And so that's primarily, it's all residential food waste that is being collected for compost. And so that was really, really exciting. And if anyone looked on the Columbian's website or grabbed a paper today, it was a featured article. And so the team is really proud of that accomplishment. And they were able to share more and kind of elevate the message about keeping food scraps out of the landfill. So in addition, along the same lines of food waste and composting, our composter recycler training program kicked off last month. And that's an 8-week train the trainer class that has over 50 attendees registered this year, which is a record for us. It's a really, really big class, and we're really proud to be offering some education around backyard composting, worm bins, green cleaning, and recycling, and helping residents reduce contamination in their recycling. Also, for residential outreach, we have partnered with Waste Connections and our City of Vancouver solid waste staff to kind of evaluate and revamp and relaunch our offerings in recycling presentations to deliver at community events. And the City of Vancouver hosts a program called Recycle You that does education and outreach. And it really was this regional outreach team that came together to deliver that. But county staff were involved, and it's been a successful project so far. We also have, and I see Bethany is on the call tonight. I wanted to provide a little update about the battery drop-off program that you've heard about over the last year or so. And we now have, she was able to recruit an additional 4 sites for that project. And we received data around the volume of batteries collected, and are able to estimate that between last July and the end of the year, over 900 pounds of batteries were collected through that drop-off project.
All
That's
right.
it.
Awesome. Any questions for Sarah?
What's the battery drop-off program called? Or how-
Battery drop-off.
Battery drop-off Clark County. I'm Googling it.
Well, Corey, I think during our meeting that we had in January, you brought up some good questions about kind of recycling where you live currently and so forth, and how to deal with that.
I did, Jason. Yeah, and I don't want to jump too much on the agenda, but I would love to actually raise this if folks are okay with it.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Cool. I recently moved to an apartment, and I realized that there is not a clear way for me to recycle the batteries that I should have left on top of my bin when I was moving out of my last place, but did not do. And so I brought them with me. And it's not clear to me how in an apartment complex one recycles batteries. And I presume that somebody like myself who's on the SWAC, probably other residents in this apartment have no idea either, and probably residents across the county have no idea what to do in situations like that. And I'd wondered if we could work with Waste Connections in some way to create some signage, or if there is already they have capacity to collect those from apartment communities, because I imagine they can collect a whole lot more. I mean, drop-offs are fantastic, but having the convenience of being able to recycle where you live is something we know that convenience is the way that we can increase diversion. So curious if there's options there.
Yeah, that's a good question. And it just that issue in general of how to provide services to multifamily properties is something that we're always kind of wanting to tackle and just provide service. It gets complicated with multifamily because obviously the the customer is the property manager owner, and we do have services and can partner. Waste Connections has educators that do work directly with multifamily properties, and so they have people on staff that are kind of doing that work and wanting to identify properties that can participate in programs like this. So we can follow up, and it is on a case by case. There isn't a plan in place to provide across the board service to multifamily properties. But similar to We Compost in terms of creating hubs and accessible and convenient drop-off points, we are looking from a geographic perspective at ways to make it as convenient as possible for people.
Could be an interesting thing to pilot, and yeah, just a few properties and see what that looks like, and compare it with drop-off locations. I imagine there'd probably be pretty good results.
Corey,
And that is a goal of ours this year. So you're speaking to our work plan, Corey.
Cool, thanks.
Corey, but that was one of the things is when I got involved with the commission, that they were talking about the difference between individual residences and multifamily. And thinking about that characterization study that is going to be done or is being done, maybe there could be a differentiation within that characterization of individual residences versus multifamily, and it would help give us some direction.
I think it'd be a really interesting thing. Do we know if the characterization study breaks down by property type or if they're going to be assessing that?
Mm-hmm.
I should know this off the top of my head, but it has been a while since I looked at the scope of work. So we will bring that back.
Yeah.
Look into it.
Sarah,
I might have by the
say,
end.
Sarah Schroeder said that both groups will be represented.
Perfect.
All right. Anything else for Sarah Kearns? All right. Let's move on to City of Vancouver. Julie, are you on here with us?
I am. I don't know if y'all can see me. Can you hear me?
I see ya.
All right. All right. Staying in the dark until it's time. Thank you for your time. In honor of your time, I'm going to be brief and happy to provide more summary in our notes that we give to the Clark County staff to share with Slack. But first and foremost, I wanted to introduce a new solid waste team member that joined our team. Will Elder is on the call. His camera might be off, but just wave, Will. You might recognize a different face other than mine coming to this group and sharing updates. So, hey, Will, and thank you, SWAC, for welcoming him to join our team as our environmental services manager, working a lot with me and the county staff on these solid waste topics that you heard tonight. For February updates, just to let you know, February is the month that our single family households receive a rate adjustment reflected on their bill. So when I was here last November, I advised you that rate adjustments had been approved by City Council, and February is usually the time that our customer base starts noticing a change, in this case, an increase, a very modest increase for the typical customer, about 1.9%, but it's the month that that can be triggering for households. So they'll see that change if they pay close attention to their bill. But multifamily and commercial customers also received notice of this adjustment and would have seen that in their bill reflected in January. And then one highlight to share with the group from 2024, this relates a little bit to the housing question. In our team has a staff member very dedicated, focused on development review, private properties or city properties that are going through a pipeline of getting built or remodeled, significant review. And that team member reviewed over 509 applications for our solid waste program, just to assure that there was planning for and intentional design for solid waste facilities, ranging from commercial, industrial, mixed use, and multifamily. And the setting that we're seeing for multifamily housing is very dynamic and diverse. It is not your traditional apartment complex. It is increasingly more urban and up and mixed use. So that leads me to their work in 2025 is going to be very focused in tandem with the city's comprehensive land use planning update work happening this year, and that we will have to revamp our code in light of new development types and housing types. Vancouver is around a 40-60 split between single family, multifamily housing unit stocks. So when we say resident, we mean anyone in any style of housing. But we know that the way we provide service to those different styles of housing is different. And the way customers experience service or service equity is different. So we're going to have a very long focus this year, very intentional effort to look at development code and how we can influence design for service equity and serviceability and affordability. And then Sarah mentioned it, but in the notes, I'll share the dates of Recycle You trainings that the city and county and Waste Connections have partnered to provide. We encourage SWAC members to attend if you have never gone. We welcome you joining and hearing from the experts in our groups talking about recycling organics, curbside collection, and beyond the curb, how to recycle beyond the curb. In addition, this is a time of year we hear from community members who are concerned about roadside litter. It's often not the time of year that is safe for operators to go out and remove litter on state highways, state ramps, or other. So we're hearing some of those trends and keeping in close contact with ecology and sharing up concerns in state rights of ways or on state roads. The city has a lot of different partnerships and contracts and mechanisms to address litter within our jurisdiction and on our city-owned spaces. And so for that, I offer, if any SWAC members are interested in litter abatement activities, we have a volunteer litter stewards program, and I'll provide the link to that information if folks are interested in learning more about or volunteering on litter pickup activities with our AmeriCorps member. And then we've begun planning for neighborhood cleanups. These are opportunities for over 60 recognized neighborhoods to come together and have a free disposal access on a Saturday. And it's a partnership between the city, neighborhoods, and Waste Connections, our service provider. And we're serving about 50 recognized neighborhoods with up to 23 Saturday events for garbage, scrap metal, and yard debris chipper disposal needs on those select weekends. And then last year, our staff partnered and piloted with Evergreen Habitat for Humanity to glean recoverable materials that would have been going into the truck for the landfill and instead set those aside at events. It was very productive, and they're going to continue that partnership led by the neighborhoods to select nonprofits that can support more diversion at the events. Because these are really community run and we support the volunteers in the safest way possible. And then supporting diversion at events is great. And then the last piece that, I think the county team mentioned, but I can't underscore, is there is a lot of work happening in the operations and educations programs. And we're here to partner with them, and implementing the new master service agreement that you'll hear about is robust and filling our plates and exciting times for us all. And that's a very key focus of us, is supporting our region's lead and partner, Clark County, and then doing our part to participate in all of those professional service procurements that you hear about or are curious about. So we emphasize that it's great work, it's very important work, and it's very timely. But one procurement we're working with the county very closely on in the months ahead is for a new processing services contract, and entering good faith negotiations with the current processor, Columbia Resource Company. So Vancouver is a party to that negotiation as well. With that, I'll pause, be available for questions, and then enjoy the rest of the show. All right. Thank you, SAC members.
All right, thanks, Julie. All right, let's move on to Waste Connections. Derek.
Hi, and good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'll just kind of whip through a couple things, and I think a lot of my stuff is probably already covered otherwise. But we, most importantly, are excited to make it through this week without any weather-related service disruptions. We were nice and prepared for the weekend. We really only missed a few stops in kind of the rural sections of the county, which is on par for this time of year. Most of those customers are used to the routine, but luckily we avoided anything else. But we're generally prepared as we head into the next couple of weeks, expecting at some point to have some snow. So let's see what else we're going to cover. We talked about the CRC contract, Recompost. I think we'll talk about the MRF later. I'm happy to ask and answer any questions you may have. I know a couple things came up already, but we are actively in the process of looking for property, and then also excited to spend every Tuesday and Thursday from now through the end of April with the county and city discussing a future service agreement. The couple of things that people have been asking about just in general, obviously everyone wants to know what the impact on tariffs are. Right now, there are no impacts on commodities. That's a big deal, obviously, in our industry. I think most of the mills that we work with have decided to wait 30 days to figure out, along with the governments. Some of our material does move towards Canada. We don't ship anything to China. But some of our plastics and some of our other materials go into Canada. So there's a potential for an impact, but right now it's business as usual. And then for whatever the reason may be, we are still experiencing significant delays in delivery of heavy equipment, particularly our route trucks. So we are supposed to get 5 new trucks in the next month and a half, starting the middle of February. Those trucks were ordered in November of 2023, and we're just now getting them. So the trucks that we ordered for delivery in 2025, we placed those orders in October. So the hopes of seeing them in 2025 are minimal, I'll say. So there are still significant delays in trucks. And Waste Connections as a company places significant orders nationwide to provide for our fleet. So usually if we have kind of a standard issue truck, we can take acceptance of that a little sooner, but even those standard issue trucks are being pushed out. And one of the things we hear from our manufacturers that I see in the notes is lack of labor available at their facilities in whether it's northern Mexico or some of the facilities are in the Midwest, but they're still experiencing significant delays. And then the last thing I would just note real quick is kind of exciting news for us right now is we have been partnering with Cascadia Tech through the school system in town, and we've had a lot of success in the last few years, but in particular, we've been doing a intern program in which it eventually leads to permanent positions. We were able to hire 4 individuals out of Cascadia Tech last year, and this year we have 8 new interns who have started at our sites in the last month, and they will work through the rest of the school year for us on an intern basis. They work about 3 or 4 hours a week. We give them some different tasks to accomplish, and they're great kids, and they're doing a great job. And hopefully, at the end of their tenure, if some of them want to stay on in a permanent capacity, we would have availability for them to move in those roles. But it's a real nice success program we're having right now. Happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Any questions for Derek?
You said earlier that he's going to address the MRF later on in the meeting.
I don't know. I don't know how deep we're going to get into that in the presentations that are on, but you know, Mike, I know you're intensely interested in that. So I think your original question I heard earlier was, you know, will a new MRF be able to target additional materials? You know, a new MRF will certainly increase throughput. It will bring with it new technologies, such as optical sorters that we've not been able to utilize the current MRF. And so, you know, with it, you get certainly all the whiz bang new items. But at the end of the day, it also comes down to markets and how affordable things can be to make things affordable to a consumer. Is it worth it to pick a widget out of the waste flow to hold on to it for 6 months to get enough widgets to ship it to whoever has it? And what's the cost of that? And is the city or the county or whoever the customer is willing to pay for it? So a lot of it comes down to economics. You can certainly build it to target all sorts of different materials, but it's just a matter of whether or not there's enough volume, and then whether or not there's a market to move the material to. You know, milk jugs is a perfect example, right? We barely can pull enough milk jugs off the line to create a load every 6 months, and 6 months worth of milk jugs become moldy and rotten and are unshippable. So, you know, those kinds of things are the dynamics that go into any of these new facilities, but it will be state of the art. It will run at an incredibly high pace, and it'll be collect fingernails if we wanted to get out of the waste flow. We can certainly do that. And then I think there's also, you have to keep an eye on some of the regulations that are going on in the state right now. The state of Washington, we've got a request from the Department of Ecology to look at a standardized list of kind of a base list of recycling items that's going to be statewide. So how does that play into Clark County, and what are those decisions going to be? Are we directed to certain types of materials by the state, and how does that work out? So I think there's a lot yet to be determined, and we're really kind of in the infancy stages of it, but certainly feedback is always welcomed.
Thanks, Derek. Along that line, and you actually raised and accentuated my question where you said that some of the materials you capture go to Canada. And one of the things that in my extra time of doing a little bit of reading, and how much recycled material goes by rail from the facilities like yours to the eventual customer. And that was one of the things that I was curious, not only a question to you, but to Joel, with the new site or any of the sites that we have, do we have access, and do you currently use rail for any transport of recycled or recaptured materials?
That's a great question. Some material, due to the length and distance of which it travels, does go on a train. It does not get there directly from our service, but we might hire a trucking company to take it to a rail yard to put it on a train. I will say that there are sites around Clark County that have better access to rail than other sites that potentially could allow a new MRF to put material directly onto a train, and not have to even go the route of using a short haul trucking company. You could load straight into rail cars and then put it on a rail. And I can also tell you that from some of the brokers that we've talked to, there is an intense interest in using that to say take cardboard to the Georgia Pacific mill down in Toledo, which is where the bulk of our material goes right now. Bulk of our cardboard goes. They like the idea of a rail system. So I think that's a real possibility.
Okay, because I didn't notice rail as being an option or a criteria for the consulting group when they look for a new site. And just,
Well, I think the consulting group that you're talking about is the consulting group that Joel's hiring, which is the consulting group for a fourth transfer station. Waste Connections is building a MRF, and Waste Connections will not be using a siting consultant to locate the facility. It'll be a Waste Connections owned property and a Waste Connections owned facility. So we'll do that due diligence on our own. We'll certainly engage the city and county in the process, but in general, it'll be directed by our own staff.
okay, thanks for that clarification.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions for Derek? I just want to say it's exciting to hear that you guys are utilizing Cascadia Tech. It's a great program. Do
Great
some work
kids.
with, what's that?
Great kids.
Yep, absolutely. So great job there. Looking forward to increasing workforce development in Clark County and so forth. That's definitely a need moving forward. So that's awesome. Let's move on to our presentation from Parametrics.
Hello, everybody on the SWAC committee. Good to see you. I'm Carl Huffnagel with Parametrics. I'm a civil engineer, and I've been working in solid waste and recycling industry since the late 80s. I'm here tonight with my colleague from HDR, Veronica Roof, and we'll be just giving you a short overview on the new contract. I'll start out with the first couple of slides and just talk a little bit quickly about the history. I just wanted to mention that Parametrics is the consultant that was selected to do the siting of the new fourth transfer station. And we'll just mention that in one of these next slides here. The agenda for our presentation, we'll just quickly talk about a little bit of the history of the regional system. Most of you probably know this very well. And a quick overview of the current regional system. And then I'm going to hand it off to Veronica to talk about the new contract. Parametrics and HDR were the consultants supporting the county and working with the county and the city of Vancouver, and of course CRC over several years to negotiate the new contract. If we can move on to the next slide. This is just a recounting, sort of a high level of the history of the regional system, beginning as far back as 1991, at which time there were a number of interlocal agreements executed between the cities and the county to cover the regional system work. In 92, CRC entered the picture. I believe there was, they were preceded by others, but they became involved, and the new transfer stations were built in that period, and particularly the West Van station and the CTR station. That contract that CRC held covered bundled services. It covers the operation and maintenance of the transfer stations and the provision of those stations. It covers the transport and the disposal of the waste. There was a significant contract extension in 2006, which I believe that's included the development of the third transfer station, the Washougal station, which was developed somewhat after that. So that's a slightly newer station, but still well into its teens now in terms of age. In around 2019, the county began a regional solid waste system study assisted by JRMA, another consultant team. They prepared a very detailed study that is shown in the graphic to the right, the different areas that study took on. And that study actually persisted well on into, I think, into early 2021 when it was finally completed. The parametrics team was brought on in late 2020 and really started work in 2021 with the support for the initiation of a new contract, the contract with CRC. And that was a negotiated contract. That's when our negotiation support work started for you or for the county. And that work continued on and culminated in the execution of the new master services agreement in late 2024. September, I believe, was the month that it was actually finally initialed or signed. And that contract, which we're going to talk about in a minute, includes a master services or umbrella contract, and then three subcomponents of that individual subcontracts, if you will, one covering the operation and maintenance of the three transfer stations, as well as the transfer and disposal of the waste that arise at those stations and the other services that also go on in parallel at those stations. And there's a separate subcontract that covers the operation of the material recovery facility that is currently embedded in the West Van transfer station. And then the third subcontract for services covers the future capital improvements that are going to be made at the three stations, the funding of which Jeff talked about earlier from one of the funds. And so there's that third package that's a separate subcontract under that contract that was signed in September. In February this month, we're really initiating a cost benefit analysis of public ownership and operation of the transfer station or options thereof. And that work is just now starting. Parametrics is actually leading that work, but we're a sub-consultant to the FCS group who have a master financial support contract with the county. And that work is just starting. And we hope to have some results, additional results from that a little later this year, hopefully by the third quarter. So you will probably be hearing about that in the not too distant future. And lastly, and I mentioned this just a minute ago, starting next month, we will be initiating the siting work for the fourth transfer station. And yes, maybe one of the criteria, Mike, will be having rail access. That would certainly be beneficial and lend itself to another form of transport and avoiding short hauls, either to a barge or longer hauls by truck to one of the regional regional landfill disposal sites up the Columbia.
Mm-hmm.
I'll move on to the next slide, which is just a current overview of the system. Again, this is sort of a regurgitation of what's going on, but there basically are the collection services delivered under multiple contracts between the cities as well as the county and the different service providers, including Waste Connections. Then there's the regional solid waste system transfer station services that I talked about. Again, that's a bundled services that include transfer, transport, and then disposal of solid waste. And then there's the recyclables processing services that again are occurring at the current MRF that's embedded in West Van. Again, there are the three major transfer stations that make up the system, as well as that material recovery facility embedded in West Van. I'm not sure these next figures are quite right. They may be a little bit dated and but the municipal solid waste tonnage is certainly at or above 400,000 tons and is on the upward swing. I believe the recycling tonnage may be higher than this. And I'm going to maybe ask Julie, because I think she mentioned this number in a meeting earlier today. I thought we were talking something between 50 and 60,000 tons per year.
That
And
is
maybe
correct.
Derek and
Yeah, that might be the
Um,
county's share of the tons, but when you commingle county and cities, it's about 60,000, give or take.
yeah.
And that fluctuates with recovery and how consumers recycle or what they consume.
So that's my sort of part of the overview. We're very happy to have this chance to finally to talk to the SWAC, and I suspect you'll see both myself and others from the parametrics team at future SWAC meetings as we get into some of these other services. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Veronica, who's going to just give us the highlights of the new contract.
Thank you, Carl. Well, good evening. My name is Veronica Roof. I have had the opportunity to work with Carl on this procurement, but also we have worked together for others in the Washington area. I want to give a little background that I am a licensed attorney. I have nearly 2 decades of experience focusing on solid waste and resource recovery consulting primarily for local governments. And I have to say that, and I've told the county and the city this before, that this is the most complex negotiations and contract that, in my experience, we have put together. So we came in with a contract that was in place since 1992, some of them, various amendments, different contracts, different terms, different definitions. Some things in practice, but maybe not captured. So it was a process to get an understanding of where the contract was on day one, and then where we wanted the contract to go. One of the main issues also was, since this contract had been in place for nearly 3 decades, there had been significant population growth, but even more so, significant growth in the amount of waste and recycling that was being managed through this system. So under this new contract, we wanted to make sure that this contract could handle this material in a manner that met the needs and the expectations of all. So we have included it for the planning for a new transfer station, and as well as a new MRF, the need to move that MRF out of the current facility, the transfer station, to add additional capacity and into a private MRF offsite. In addition, as part of this new contract, we clearly provided for funding of the current and new transfer stations, with the potential for these transfer stations to transfer ownership to the region. Then there is the need to make sure that these facilities are being maintained currently and also can be maintained once ownership was transferred. So as you can see, I know that there was a substantial investment in the consultants, as was discussed earlier, but we were able to negotiate a much more substantial funding for capital improvements and maintenance of the facilities that will help the system overall in the long term. In addition, we have inclusion of expanded equipment requirements. Thinking of the future, we wanted to make sure that it was enough on day one, but also enough on the last day. So there is an adjustment for how much equipment is required as the county continues to grow. And also, we had inclusion of strategies to increase capacity. We gave the flexibility for the hours of operation or equipment requirements to adjust. So those are specified in the new contract and were not specified in the prior contracts. Next slide, please. Also, we view this now as a master services agreement. As I mentioned prior, it was one contract for all services with various amendments and different complex financial terms. So under the new contract, we transitioned to a master services agreement with various attachments. The first attachment was focused on the transfer services. So the operations at the transfer stations and the transport of those materials to their final destination, the disposal site, and then also disposal. The second attachment to the master services agreement is focused on a recycling processing at the current facility located at one of the transfer stations. The third is the funds that I mentioned that the county and city were able to negotiate and CRC agreed to. Those are how those funds would be used fall under the new capital improvement services. So that says how those funds will be used and managed throughout this term of this contract. In addition, we have the flexibility, knowing with the new regulations that are coming through, we wanted to provide some flexibility. So there is flexibility to add similar services under other attachments, which, as was brought up today, we are negotiating the contract amendment for the new recycling processing services at a new facility. The next thing was that we had also put in updated industry standards and performance assurances to provide further protections for the local governments, but also your constituents. Next slide, please. As we mentioned, the last contract was negotiated and commenced in 1992. Not only was this one of the most complex contracts, but also one of the longest contracts. So the industry has changed quite a bit since 1992. So with this new contract, we brought it to current date industry standards. We also made the contract term they varied by the service. The transfer station services was 9 years, and the purpose of that was because of the funding that was incorporated into that, the capital improvement funding. So that is the longest term. This next one, the recycling processing services, that's 3.5 years. And the reason why that's short is because of the need to free up that capacity at that transfer station. So we wanted to provide enough time, but also get that capacity for the waste management as soon as possible. Then the new capital improvement services aligns with the transfer station services, since the fund comes out of that transfer station services contract. The factors that really drove the contract, as I mentioned, was one, the public ownership of the transfer stations. We wanted to make sure there is a requirement as to the term of all these contracts in order to reserve the right to assume ownership by the local government. So we wanted to preserve that right. We also negotiated those financial terms, the contributions to the maintenance of the facilities, as well as capital improvements, such as the 4th transfer station. And then we also wanted to, with the second one, with the shorter term for the processing, try to free up capacity as soon as possible. We also heard during negotiations that there is a need for maintenance of the facilities as well as capital improvements. So I know that there is cost incurred for the professional services, but we were able to, under the old contract, there was an estimation from the Regional Solid Waste System study that there would be a need for about $60 million for current funding, and we were able to negotiate in excess of that under the current contract. So the new contract not only provides for the funding, the contribution of that funding, but it also has a maintenance plan, and it also states who's responsible for what and whether it will be directly paid by CRC or whether it will be paid through the funds. Clearly defines the calculation of the funds, the annual adjustments, the timing for the funding, the management of the funding was really important. And then, so there was transparency, and we clearly defined what would be allowed to come out of those funds. As Joelle mentioned earlier, the county and the city will be supervising that. Next, please. We also have so many other enhancements. We just want to highlight some for you all today, but we had discussion of uncontrollable circumstances that came around during COVID. We wanted to make sure that we wanted to limit that clause to be available in a situation where it was truly an uncontrollable circumstance. But this is a critical service, and we wanted to make sure it was there. So we focused on that, and then also we focused on the administrative charges and the performance fees. In the event meant that CRC was not performing to the standards. We wanted to have some teeth in the contract to promote performance, but it's just more in line with industry standards. We clearly defined how the fees would be calculated. We created a calculator to make it easier when that time of year comes about, and the fee adjustments as well. We put a contingency plan. What happens if, the barging system's not available, or transportation's not available, or some other things? What is the contingency plan? And we wanted to make sure that there was enough equipment. So we have a clear equipment plan to make sure that we have enough if there is an interruption for a short period of time. Next. Well, with that, I know we shared a lot, but I have to say, once again, this was a very complex project, and where we ended up at the end of the day, I think that the county and the cities and the region overall really advocated strongly for their constituents and came out with a win on this contract.
Thanks, Veronica. So that's the sort of our quick overview, and I wonder if there's a good time for questions from the committee.
I have a question. At the beginning, you had mentioned that the transfer stations were getting into their teens. What is the expected half-life of a transfer station before it requires either an entire rebuild or a new location?
Good, a good question. And they're actually, the Washougal station is into its teens. The other two stations are well into their third decade. And we have a long experience with transfer stations. We design them. We do a lot of renewal and replacement. So we have a pretty good data bank to draw on to answer that question. And it's a question that's often asked by owners. And really the answer is, for most stations, the answer is they have an indefinite life, and it can be extended indefinitely with good maintenance. There are two things that need to be dealt with transfer station. One is growth and change in programs, which change what has to happen in those stations. And we find that many stations are just antiquated in their ability to manage waste in a modern way. So that has driven either enlargement or upgrades or full replacements of some stations that have become obsolete. So there's an obsolescence factor that could be at work, particularly for the older stations designed certainly in the last century. And most stations designed within the last 20 years have been more adept at anticipating the need for growth. So they tend to have a little different design theory behind them. The other major factor besides obsolescence, functional obsolescence, is just wearing out. And there are certain areas in transfer stations, and Derek will certainly vouch for this, such as tipping floors and pavements, for example, that we all know wear very rapidly due to the abusive use that goes on. There's also a lot of corrosion for the metals that are usually used in transfer stations that need to be addressed, or the metal envelopes of transfer buildings can start to deteriorate. So again, the short answer is obsolescence could be a factor in any transfer station. And as well, just the size of the footprint of the station may not permit enlargement. And I'm going to use CTR as an example of a station that has a fairly small footprint for a station that does that much waste. So it's very site constrained, and its ability to grow significantly is very hemmed in. West Van, on the other hand, has a lot of footprint space, so it probably has the potential to grow if it needs to accommodate, new volume or new functions. So that's probably the two answers to your question. I hope I didn't go too long.
And I just want to add also, in the contract, we did include, which Parametrics is performing audits, which was not included in your old contract. So they're facility audits. So each, is it, how
Yeah,
we want
we're We're doing those, we're doing condition audits of the 3 transfer stations every 3 years. We did the first audit in the fall of 2023. And that audit report was finished in the spring last year and is available to look at. And it was a top to bottom look at the condition, not the functionalities, simply the condition, the physical condition of everything at those stations, the mechanical, electrical systems, the building envelopes, the pavements, and the technology like scales and so forth. Those investigations that we did in that first audit, I don't think revealed anything that CRC wasn't already aware of, or the county as well and the city of Vancouver were aware of. But it definitely put a light on the condition of those facilities. And having seen many transfer stations, I can report that we did not find anything unusual in those conditions that we haven't seen at other transfer stations of similar ages, particularly at West Van and CTR, which again are over 30 years old. Hopefully that answered your question, maybe more than you wanted to know.
No, that was wonderful information. Thank you so much.
Are there other questions for the parametrics team?
One quick question, if I may. Did you folks participate in the city of Tacoma deciding to take ownership of their operation? And
We did
if
not.
so, is that their positives and negatives being included in your assessment for us?
We have not talked to the city of Tacoma about their history of public and private ownerships and operations. But thanks for mentioning that, because we have talked recently with the city of Spokane County, I should say, who also just recently went through a transition from private operation of publicly owned stations to fully publicly operated. So we will avail ourselves of Tacoma's experience, and it'll be interesting to see. Again, we're working under the FCS group for that work.
Thank you.
Yep. I believe we're probably done if there are no more questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Parametrics team, for coming in and presenting for us.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Carl and Veronica.
All right. Moving on to the next agenda item, bylaws. So Kyle and I got together, kind of re-looked at the bylaws. The last time they revised, Kyle and a previous member of SWAC had done that. But I'm going to pass this over to Amanda to kind of highlight and discuss what we talked about and then open up for discussion.
Hi, everyone. So we didn't make too many changes to the bylaws. The things we did change, we started with this table right here. And so it outlines the citizens and the city and town representatives. So something that we did is we, after discussion, decided to bring it to you to add 6 new positions. So each town or city has the opportunity to send a representative to be on the SWAC team. So that means that we would have no less than 10 members, but no more than 16 members, which in some ways does cause some thought, as the quorum would be hard to meet if we chose to keep it at a majority. So one of the things that we also did was we brought the quorum to 5 members. So now a quorum, if this passes, will be 5 members of that 16 or however many that we have on the board. The other thing that was changed is right here, the election of officers shall occur during the February meeting in odd number years, or whenever an office becomes vacant, either at the outgoing officer's final meeting or the meeting immediately following the vacancy. And so that was also changed. And the other right here just says the quorum shall consist of at least 5 members. And then that was changed throughout the document to reflect that.
And really, the thought process on changing the quorum amount to stating at least 5 members. So if you go back up to that table, there are 10 members that are appointed by Clark County Council. So it would be a simple majority of those appointed by council to get to that number of 5.
I do believe it's actually 9 because the city of Vancouver.
Thank you for correcting me.
You're welcome.
This is Diana Perez. I have a question. A couple of questions. On that table, it says agriculture. Can you clarify, is that USDA or different department? I wasn't sure what that was.
Sorry, I can actually show you, I can tell you exactly what our reading is for it.
And then the second one was if there was any consideration, just like a third of the membership for quorum, as opposed to sticking to a number, that you would go with like a third.
So the reason we thought 5 is because we are not guaranteed that every city or town will want a representative, and we want to make sure that there is a decent amount of people that are actually making the quorum and the decisions. There are other options. If we don't make a quorum, we can of course do a lot of digital voting, but so far I don't think we've had an issue having 5 members, at least as long as I've been here.
Okay, thanks.
And agriculture is shall own or be employed by a local agricultural entity located within Clark County. So ours would be Joe Zimmerman, and he owns BZ Farms.
Oh, business related?
Yes.
Organization. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Yeah, this is Greer. I've got so these city town representatives, these would be employees of those cities or towns.
We still have to, of course, check with what the city and towns are doing, but we assume it's going to be a lot like the city of Vancouver, that it would be a council member. And if there's not a council member available, then perhaps it would go like to the next person in charge. I believe it was the public director for City of Vancouver. So I think that was the idea, that we were going to let them choose their representative.
And is this change or proposed change based on input from those cities who want to have a seat at the table?
I'm sorry.
Were we approached?
We were, yes. Thank you. Yes, we did. Yes, we did have one city that actually did want to be part of it, but the position was already filled at that point. And that got us to thinking that perhaps we should give all cities and towns the same opportunity. And I will say, Diana, you did bring up a really good point about a percentage. And that's something that if everyone feels strongly about 5% is too low, we can always change it to 50% of the amount of positions that are held. So if, there's only 12 positions that are filled, then it'd be 6 people.
Sure, I think it's a great suggestion. I was actually thinking the same thing myself, to change just that wording to say that 50% of the.
So 50 instead of 5. I mean, I definitely think that makes sense.
Because that's what it is currently, right? It's
actually now in the bylaws, it only says the majority of. There's no percentage, no amount. The majority of is all it says.
Either is fine with me. I think either implies 50% body.
Yeah. I do like a good hard number, so I'm all for 50% if everyone would like that change.
Five.
Can I offer just a suggestion? And I don't know, but if there's a minimum quorum, is there a way to require a unanimous vote to make any changes? Since a quorum, the minimum would represent the majority of a vote, but if it were not a unanimous vote of just the quorum, then that might be a minimum of the group, would be my fear.
So okay, so you're saying that if there's not a quorum, like, I'm
Well,
sorry.
no, like if only 5 people show and 3 vote, then that's not a majority of the group. It would be my only fear.
It's the majority of the total positions filled.
Okay.
Yes, so if there's 10 positions filled, then that would majority would be 6. And there is, like, they do say in here as well that if there is not a quorum, you wouldn't be able to approve the minutes, which we could approve later, either at the next meeting or virtually, we could approve that. But you can still have the discussions and all of those things that there's no voting on. You just couldn't get those minutes approved, or if there was swamp stuff for the plan and we needed approval, like things like that couldn't be done. But anything that didn't require a vote could still be held for that SWAC meeting.
So this is Ruben again. So we're going from 10 current SWAC positions, with one of those being the city of Vancouver, the other 9 being citizens from the county. 16 chair positions, of which 7 are now city representatives, and 9 citizens from the county, non-affiliated. Is there any, I guess, any consideration as to maybe the implications of having kind of the shift in power, I guess, for lack of a better word, and not meaning to, create any kind of, assumption that, there's a power balance, but is there any consideration as that? Because, a lot of these committees are supposed to be advisory, based on citizens input, citizens participation to the organizations, to the council, and wondering what impact or how that may change, especially if these cities that are invested in it, especially with a new facility being cited. I'm sure there's a lot of attention and desire to want to be able to express and kind of follow that process from each of these cities' perspective. But because I'm kind of opening it up to a conversation as to where we think where we think kind of the purpose or the makeup of this SWAC would go with augmenting it so much with these representatives from.
Absolutely. I have looked at several of the other SWACs from around Washington, the different counties, and some of them do have verbiage in there that says that the cities and towns can have a representative, but it's not a voting party. We didn't discuss that because we were just trying to make it equal with like Vancouver so that other cities and towns have that same opportunity. But that's definitely a discussion if that's for the board. If that's something that is a worry, then absolutely, we should definitely be talking about it.
I have a question kind of along that line as a follow-up. In the in the material talking about contracts and all the changes and whatnot, there's reference to a regional commission. And my question is, are these cities represented on that regional commission? And would this be a duplicate representation on the topic by also including them as part of SWAC?
So, oh, sorry.
No, that's a good question, Mike. We do have our separate regional solid waste systems steering committee, and it's comprised of the public works directors from each of the cities. So there is representation in that group. It's just that group's focus is a little bit different. Although there is some spillover. And I think when this was brought to us or brought to Jason, I think it was more that some of the cities felt it was unfair that the city of Vancouver had a appointed spot. They didn't. And so I think that's why this is coming up, but I'll let Jason speak to that.
No, exactly what Joel is saying. You know, some of the cities, it goes back to the city of Vancouver having an appointed spot that they get to fill, and they just wanted representation within this group as well. And I didn't see any harm in that. I definitely, you know, there's some great conversation here, whether we want to keep the voting rights just to the citizens or, and then, you know, a quorum being from that group and just have this, the cities being on there, in kind of a, I don't know if advisory is the right word, but in their own capacity to be a part of the group, but just have no voting rights.
That's an interesting idea. I have seen that in bodies before, and I think it works.
I think in our Congress, we call it Guam, Puerto Rico, and Washington, D.C.
I've heard it referred to as an advisory commission in bodies like this. But
so if,
good.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So if we did that, would that mean that all the cities would have a non-voting role? I do see. I mean, I see the point that, you know, city of Vancouver is on the commission and no other city representatives are, and so I do think that is and can be a valid argument. You know, for those on the outside, you know, trying to look in. I don't know if, I don't know. I feel like maybe we need to have a little more discussion about this, and maybe this can be, you know, this can be molded into something that actually works, and, you know, where the cities in the county, you know, feel that they have a seat at the table. Because I know Spokane County, the advisory commission does have, you know, city representation for a couple of their cities. And so maybe an option is maybe instead of having 7 of these cities, maybe it's a revolving representation, or, you know, geographically it's given to a city representative. But these are just ideas, not proposals by any means. But I think we need to maybe look at it before look at it a little bit deeper.
Some very valid points, absolutely.
Yeah, I concur, Ruben. I think there's definitely some consideration to give to the dynamic shift with going with this proposal. I would support more discussion on this.
Okay.
And I would also be interested too. I don't want to direct folks or what have you to do more work on this, but I mean, you know, are there other bodies that do this well? And you know, I mean, I come from a North Central Texas Council of Governments, and I can look into what that body. I can't remember the balance that they had, but this does seem like a pretty big shift in balance, and there's probably some examples in other regions that we can look at.
I do have all the copies of the bylaws for all the counties in Washington, and they did vary.
Okay.
Yes, so they
Yep.
did vary because I used them to model some of our stuff after, especially King County. They really have it dialed in. And so they all kind of differ from each other, but I have those. And if that's something that you guys want to open up another committee for, I can send them along for you to review.
That makes sense. If we're gonna review it, looking at active examples of alternative organizations would help us be more objective.
So why don't we take this, let's table passing the suggested changes to the bylaws for now. Amanda, could you send out all the examples to the current SWAC on what different counties do in their bylaws, and then we can revisit this at a future meeting?
Perfect.
Does that seem reasonable?
I think
All right.
sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm speaking to the abyss right now.
I also want to make sure we preserve the discussion that we had around the definition of quorum and make sure that's captured. I would advocate actually for a change right now, just to say that it ought to be a majority. I think it's a little risky to keep quorum so low and allow decision making basically to be done by 3 members of a body that could be as big as what, 16? Which is how
So the only concern I have with that, right, so I would just caveat that it'd be filled positions.
Right.
Majority
Agreed.
filled positions.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm fine with that.
So currently in the bylaws, it says the majority of the filled positions. So currently we're already doing that. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, revert back to that instead of the change that was made in the proposal.
We're not gonna do any, this was just our draft, our recommendation, but it sounds like you guys are gonna look more into it. So we still have our original bylaws that we're
Right.
sticking
Right. Yeah. I would suggest that the updated proposal that we go with reverts back to the existing definition of quorum.
with. Okay, I will make a note of that.
One other thing that we wanted to define within the bylaws was the officer position, and defining that specifically in there because it's kind of vague. So the proposal was with officer position that they would be elected in the February meeting of odd numbered years for a 2-year position. Right now, I feel like we still have a lot of groundwork to establish, a lot of foundation to establish. I would like to continue as chair to see kind of this through and as what we're doing with the solid waste management plan. Joe is willing to continue as vice chair, as opposed to changing up the officer positions at this time with a lot of stuff in the air. So I'm putting that forward just so we can have a continuation in what we're doing. Would like to open that up for discussion, or if there's any objections or concerns.
This is Diana. Just a couple of more thoughts regarding the edits here to the bylaws. Is there a way to get a red line version of the proposed revisions in addition to a clean version? And then does this, I'm assuming it would be reviewed for any potential changes to code or impacts to code, county code. Anyway, just wanted to make sure that we all had good time to review any changes before.
I will definitely send out the red line version when I send out the SWACs from other counties. I'll make sure that that's included so you can.
Okay, great. Okay.
And Diana, we will be updating the code once everyone has finalized this. That's on our radar. The ones that are in county code are like from the 70s right now. So we're like, the ones that are in code aren't even our current bylaws, and that was brought to our attention. So we were like, oh, we really need to make sure that once this group finalizes the bylaws, we will do the work of administratively getting the code revised.
Okay, it'd be good to, in that red line version, identify which one of those codes would need to be changed, just to see that.
For sure.
Hearing.
That's a great point.
All right, any other discussion on this? All right, moving on to other business. One thing that was brought up in the November meeting that I was not able to be at was for in-person meetings changing to an alternate site from where our current in-person meetings are. I've taken county staff to the location I would propose that we change our meetings to, which is the Building Industry of Association of Clark County's office. It's a very secure office. It's clean. It's very well lit. Parking is right next to the doors. Would have no interruptions and so forth. Technology is fantastic. It's a big enough room. Easy access to the restrooms and so forth. Is there any opposition or any discussion about relocating future in-person meetings to Building Industry, which is located on Main Street, just north of the Dairy Queen on Main Street and kind of uptown Vancouver? So not too far. It's probably what, a mile and a half from where we're currently meeting in person or so. But like I said, the location I feel is a little bit better.
You got me a Dairy Queen, so I'm all for it.
I don't have any attachment to the prior location. I've been there once, had a hard time finding the building.
This would be this would be very obvious.
Yeah. Was there anything specifically that kind of triggered that request? I don't have a preference myself either. I work close to both of those, but yeah, I will say that finding the location the first time or two was you know, a little difficult. But was there something in specific or in terms of that suggestion?
I think for me, that was location of the parking lot to the actual meeting space, utilizing one of our community partners who's willing to offer up the space at no cost, and just I think the overall feel of the facility.
I'm not familiar with the new location, but I think, you know, if it fits our needs, especially if there is going to be some growth in the commission, and you know, it's safe, easy to access, easy to get to. Okay. Are we looking to have a vote on that?
Do we, staff, do we need a vote on that, or?
One quick question, if I may, and that has to do with our city representatives. I kind of got the impression that where we're at, based on their work expectations and location, is most convenient. Is this other location as convenient to the our city support?
City or county support?
Yep.
I think for the county, most of us are working almost fully remote, and so it's negligible, and the location's so nearby our office. We were having a little bit of challenges just at our office location after hours with I guess we had, I think Amanda or Sarah might know better than I, but I think we had like a security person coming in and sort of interrupting the meeting and putting keys away and that sort of thing. So Jason had recommended this site and this was his preference and we took a look at it and I think it would fit the group a little bit better. So, and there's no inconvenience to our staff and the city, they work at a different location, so I'm assuming it wouldn't be
Yeah.
any impact to them either.
I'll defer to Julie and Will.
Yeah, we work in the office and report to the office. For the commission, happy to let the commission lead this conversation and also happy to use a city facility should that be the will or the desire of the commission for the purposes of facilitating a public commission accessible to the public. I'm not familiar with other commissions and how those are conducted in meeting spaces, whether public or private, but it's a worthy discussion, and finding the location is really important for not just members, but the community that wishes to participate. So yeah, that's the best I could offer. I hope that was helpful.
This location absolutely would be accessible by the community, and I think it'd be easier for the community to find and locate where we're actually meeting at, as opposed to the current location that we're meeting at. As it's been mentioned by everyone, it's can be challenging to find exactly where we're meeting currently.
I've actually been at meetings at now both places, and it was really hard to find the first time for the SWAC meeting. I will say the Building Industry Association is very flexible, which is really nice. They're very accommodating, so we've had no issues being able to utilize that space for whatever we've needed it for.
And we would have access, I assume this was already looked at or discussed, for our meetings quarterly.
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry, who is the owner of the building?
The Building Industry of Clark County. Building Industry Association, sorry.
I'm not familiar with them. I would consider the county location to be like more politically neutral than maybe like what sounds like a trade association. I don't know if that's a consideration. There's no quid pro quo, is there?
Absolutely not.
That's all I've got. I'm agnostic. I generally yield to staff on this. I think this probably impacts them more than those of us who come on a quarterly basis to things like.
Okay.
As I say, as the staff member that sets up, I approve this change.
That's
So
critical.
don't worry about me, Corey.
Perfect. The staff really enjoy when I took the staff there, they really thought highly of the space and thought it would fit perfectly for the purposes of the commission and our quarterly meetings and so forth, and special meetings when they come up. One other thing I want to bring up that was brought to my attention, since we do have two special meetings coming up, both March and April, would people like to do that hybrid as we have been doing our quarterly meetings, so both in person and virtual, or go exclusively virtual for those meetings, since they are special meetings, and we will be focusing solely on the solid waste management plan. Is there any thoughts either way on that?
I'll just offer from my perspective, either one works, but I do like the in-person option.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll second that. Not like
Okay.
formally second that, but yeah, I agree that it's nice to see faces and be able to interact, even if just briefly, or at least have that option to do so.
I'll stand aside on this one because I unfortunately am unlikely to be able to sign up for additional Thursday evening special meetings. I don't know if that's like just a for sure thing that all special meetings end up on Thursday evenings, but I can only do this commitment on a quarterly basis on Thursday evening.
Okay, thanks, Corey.
I have no feelings one way or the other.
All right. I do prefer the in-person meetings as well with Ruben and Michael. So the special meetings for March and April that will be focusing on the solid waste management plan. We will continue to do those hybrid, but just wanted to provide that option since that is an additional commitment to get that plan done so we can get that submitted to Department of Ecology and we don't have to start over because that's absolutely what we do not want to do.
For sure.
All right, next, try and run through this really quick since we are at time. Tours for 2025.
Yeah, I'll jump in really quickly, Jason, just to invite SWAC to join a tour of Dirt Hugger set for Thursday, May 15th. So it's a little ways out, but I wanted to get it on, bring it to everyone's attention. We'll go in the morning, and Dirt Hugger is the facility that processes all of our mixed or residential organics waste from City of Vancouver and Ridgefield, as well as all of our food waste that's generated in Clark County. So it's a good opportunity to see that in action. And then also just very quickly, we're also working to schedule a tour of the West Van material recovery facility for you all to kind of orient you to our system in person. Great learning opportunity.
Were we gonna try and include Tidewater and?
Yes, yeah. So Tidewater would be at the same time as West Van. That would be sort of a one day activity, and we don't have the date set for that yet, but we do have the Dirt Hugger tour date set.
Awesome. We'd love to come see your work, Ruben.
Love to have you guys. I will say that it was last year we got a tour of Central and West Van, and it was great. It's definitely worth the cost of admission. Yeah, looking forward to it. So May 15th, got it down.
Awesome. All right. Covered additional SWAC meetings. So we have the 2 scheduled. That's just to get the solid waste management plan. All the stuff done on that we need. So we have our next meeting March 6th. Hopefully the majority can be there. I know Corey, you said you're only able to commit to the quarterly meetings. So if you have to miss that, that's excused. But other than that adjourns, that sums up our meeting. Any other discussions or things for the good of the order?
Jason, I did want to mention that we sent out the public comments and the ecology comments for SWAC to review. So that's their homework prior to the next meeting. I can't remember if we mentioned the meeting's been kind of long today. I was like, I don't think we mentioned that at the beginning. So I wanted to make sure that we mentioned that to review those comments and to review the changes that are reflected in those comments. So the county had to respond to each of the public comments and each of ecology's comments. So that will give you sort of a precursor as to what you will be looking for to the changes that you'll see reflected in the revision that you'll have for next meeting in March 6th. So that's sort of we're going to give you the comments. You're going to see the responses. March 6th, you're going to have a whole new plan to review. And then our April 10th meeting, we are hoping that you will approve it. So I guess we'll be able to kind of dive into it a little bit during our March meeting. Hopefully we can get it to you a little sooner. If anybody wants to request paper copies, we will do those again. And Amanda's going to be working on sending out email communication just to kind of get some information on how many copies we're going to be providing. I've reached out to each of the cities. I have a few copies for each, I believe, but I'll be touching base with them before we actually put in the order. But I know some of the SWAC members prefer printed, and if you prefer it to you want to just keep it online, we'll have it available. The moment it is available online, we will let you know. we'll send out a link for that too.
Fantastic. Thanks, Joelle. Any other questions, comments?
Next quarterly meeting is going to be at the new location.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks for working on that, everyone. Jason,
Absolutely.
look forward to seeing you on the new space.
Yep, absolutely. And then actually the March 6th meeting, for those that can attend in person, will be at the new location as well.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good
Thanks.
night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.